left there and was working on putting together criminal defense practice when on October 17, 2010, my son was walking home from the library. He was planning on becoming a lawyer and was shot and killed by two guys who were trying to steal who did steal his laptop and his cell phone. So that was the exchange for his life. I was actually in New Mexico getting ready to try a pretty big federal case. Left, came home, and offered my services to the Tempe Police Department. They accepted, and I worked the case with them and eventually found the guys that shot him. And that's an interesting story if you want to hear it.
Welcome to Hot Docket, the show where we talk about winning marketing strategies that have built the most successful law firms.
Join us every 2 weeks for the latest trends and tactics to grow your law firm.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Hot Docket podcast. Today we have with us Dan Marco of the law offices of Daniel J. Marco, operating out of Arizona. He's got a really interesting background and story, so I'm excited to just open that up. And then I think coming out of Arizona, I also have some top of mind questions for PI and the landscape out there. So we should have a lot to talk about. But with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn the mic over to Dan to give us his background, why he became a lawyer, why he transitioned to personal injury, and just talk us through that whole process.
Why? Okay. Well, let's start all the way back at the very beginning. Then I became my father is a lawyer. My brother is a lawyer. My uncles are lawyers. I have argued in front of my cousins in the Ohio State Supreme Court. My uncle Anthony Celebrezzi was mayor of Cleveland 5 times. He was in President Kennedy's cabinet. I graduated from law school in 1987. Started working for my father. My godfather was Attorney General of the state of Ohio. And so it was being a lawyer just was in my blood. And what I like to tell people all the time, which is true, is at supper, when other people were talking about the Browns, because I'm from Cleveland, when other people were talking about the Browns, my father and I were talking about the Fourth Amendment and cases that he was working on at the time. So that was the impetus to becoming a lawyer, sort of bred into me. One of my cousins just became a lawyer. Another one, I got two nieces that are lawyers, a nephew and a step-nephew, I guess you call him, is a lawyer now. So that's all I know. That's it. Don't know anything else.
It's quite a lineage. So that makes sense, and that kind of led you to becoming a lawyer. Now can you walk us through what happened next? So you became a lawyer. What led you down the path to becoming a personal injury lawyer in Arizona?
Well, from 87 to 2000, I worked with my father. My father was a Top Gun criminal defense attorney in Northeast Ohio, Richard Marco Sr., and practiced with him, sat second chair for probably 14 of those 16 years. And then when he retired, I decided that I kind of wanted to see what was outside of Ohio. You know, I lived for 40 years in Ohio. So I ended up in New Mexico, Las Cruces, New Mexico, of all places. Took the bar in New Mexico, passed it, became a public defender. Tried a felony case a week there. It was an awesome experience for anybody that wants to learn how to try a case. You have literally, I would go to breakfast to read the file and try the case after breakfast. And had a very successful run there. It was like 28-8. But it's more because everybody in New Mexico kind of goes to the same law school, has the same teachers, and then I come in from Cleveland and I'm using my pattern. They've never heard it before. They don't know what to do with it. And the juries were just fascinated by, the way I sound and the way I talk and the energy that comes from the East that they're just not used to. But the education system out there wasn't very good. No slight against it, but we had 3 kids and jumped a state west, ended up in Arizona, originally in Scottsdale and then in Mesa to get the kids a little better start. So I was practicing criminal defense. I ended up running, being the managing attorney at Davis Miles, which is a big firm. I don't really enjoy management so much. And then I left there and was working on putting together criminal defense practice when on October 17, 2010, my son was walking home from the library. He was planning on becoming a lawyer and was shot and killed by two guys who were trying to steal his, or who did steal his laptop and his cell phone. So that was the exchange for his life. Immediately, of course, I was actually in New Mexico getting ready to try a pretty big federal case. Left, came home, and offered my services to the Tempe Police Department. And they accepted because I worked the case with them, and eventually found the guys that shot him. And that's an interesting story if you want to hear it, because it kind of is.
Yeah, walk us through it.
Well, so his laptop and his cell phone were stolen, and there was no eyewitnesses, even though it was on University, right near Scottsdale Road. So it was a well-lit, well-traveled street, but there were no witnesses that came forward anyway. Right in front of an apartment building, right in a driveway. He was walking home. It was about 2 apartment buildings away from home. So anyway, they took the laptop and cell phone, and I knew, because of my experience as a criminal defense attorney, we had to find the laptop and the cell phone in order to find the guys or whoever killed him. So I was on television in 2010, probably every day for 30 days, and I would go home at night and try to think of ways to keep the media interested, because it probably had a 72-hour media shelf life, So I wanted to keep them interested, and so I could keep saying laptop and cell phone over and over again on TV. So I did that for about 30 days. I would do things like offer to hire a lawyer to represent the kid that didn't pull the trigger. If he turned on the guy that did pull the trigger, I was doing things like that. Not that I thought that they would come in on that, but that the media would continue to allow me to be on TV. So they did. There came a point in time where these ladies were working at a Fry's, and it was in late October, so they were throwing pumpkins away. And they went back to the trash bin, and lo and behold, the mother of one of the 2 kids had found this laptop in her closet, but it didn't work. So she thought, what is this junk doing here? So she brought it out, didn't put it in the dumpster, put it next to the dumpster. These 2 ladies saw it, remembered that somebody had been saying that about some kid that got shot for his laptop. They called Tempe, said, hey, what was the name of that kid that got shot for his laptop and cell phone? They said Zachary Marco. They looked in, found papers. Fortunately, they were wearing gloves because they were throwing the pumpkins away. Went through, found something with his name on it, said, oh my God, we have it. Then after that, the police took over with fingerprints and various things. And then I got involved in trial preparation. There was a dust speck on one of them, and we ended up pleading 1 to 17 years. He gets out in 2 years, and then the kid that pulled the trigger went to aggravated robbery and first-degree murder. So he's got 15 flat plus 25 to life consecutive. After that, I just...
Sorry, did you say dust speck?
Death
spec?
A death spec, where they were trying to... There was a specification on the murder charge, because it was for monetary gain, that he could be put to death if a jury chose to do so. So the negotiation was to have that removed in exchange for the lengthy prison term of at least 15 plus 25, 40 years to parole, possibility of parole. So I was involved in that. And then when that was over, I didn't know what to do. And I had done product liability cases back in Ohio, fairly successfully. General Motors, Asplin, that kind of stuff. Cars that burned, the old burn cases. And thought, well, maybe I'll do personal injury. Got a couple partners, paralegal, and just went from there.
I think that's A really interesting and obviously tragic story. But the part that sticks out to me is we had another guest on maybe 3 or 4 months ago. His name was Ryan Jones. And he had a backstory too that I thought was really like similarly kind of like tragic and interesting. His mom had been killed in a truck accident. I believe it was a truck accident. Maybe it was a head on collision, but it was a car accident of some type while he was in college. I think he was in law school. And that him going through the process of like dealing with the insurance companies, dealing with the adjusters, like seeing how everything was reduced to dollars and cents, that was what launched him into being a personal injury lawyer and kind of like gave his meaning there. The part that I think is I would I don't know if you can kind of like put clarity behind it because I'm assuming it's pretty tied to like raw emotion, but for him that was like a pretty direct, I think, line, right? Like personal injury affected him so personally. He saw what the negative side of the system looked like and he wanted to get involved. For you, it feels like it's you had something horrible happen, but there was no personal I'm assuming there was no like civil case or personal injury aspect. There was no premises liability or anything like that. This was just strictly like a criminal case, and you still landed on the side of starting a personal injury practice and wanting to get involved on that side. Like the way I heard you describe it is I decided to just like try out personal injury and bring on a couple of partners, but it feels like there is still like a link, like a link in the chain between what happened and why you decided to move into personal injury.
Well, okay, so if you look at our reviews or whatever you call those things, those reviews, I guess you call them. Yeah. If you look at our reviews, they're all 5-star except for one that for some reason is a 4-star, but it's because of a couple of things. A, because of what I went through with Zachary, I wanted to put together a practice that was small enough that I could pay attention to each client individually and as a person, and to be as empathetic as possible. Because when I came out of what was the worst time in my life, these people are entering a part of their life which is the worst time of their life. It might be a sore back, it could be a broken bone. You know, my dad, I remember one time somebody was in my office in Ohio, Medina, Ohio, complaining about something. I went down to my dad and I said, I don't know what the hell this guy is complaining about. This is stupid, it's silly. And my father looked at me and goes, anybody that's in your office is there because they are talking to you about the biggest problem in their life right now. And if you don't treat it that way, you will never be successful. Well, maybe I remembered that and maybe I didn't. But after what happened to my son, I did. And I happen to have a paralegal, Steve, who buys into that relationship with our clients. And we treat them like they are going through the worst time in their life. And we try to keep them in the loop. And some cases are just not very good. But we give it as good a shot as we can and let them know we're giving it as good a shot as we can. And we let them know that we understand. We try to tell them at the very beginning, look, once you sign our contract, you forget about all this. All you do is take care of yourself. That's it. You heal. When you're healed, we'll step back in. Well, that attitude directly comes from what I went through with my son.
Yeah.
You can't talk to somebody until you can't get in the way of somebody healing and progressing. I wrote a book called Everywhere Nowhere. It's on Amazon, and it is me, because I'm a lawyer and I had a grief counselor. I would write what I wanted to say before I'd go in and read it, but that went on for months and months, maybe over a year. And at one point, she said, "Geez, you ought to take these, put them together, and put it in a book." So I did. So again, what I do in that book is not offer advice, but I do offer a glimpse at somebody that went through the same thing and survived. And that's what Steve and I try to do with personal injury is, look, you aren't alone in this, but you're the one that has to survive, and we'll help you as best we can, and then we'll worry about the case later.
Can you
that
tell
makes
us?
any sense? I don't know.
It does. Can you tell us a little bit about how Arizona has become a little different of a market than almost anywhere else in the U.S.?
Well, Arizona has. I have to be careful. My personal opinion is Arizona has been bought and sold by the bigger firms that have come in from somewhere else and gotten money from God knows where to cover every train, bus, television ad. Jesus, I was driving with my wife down to see a Indians Guardians game down in Goodyear, and we started counting billboards, personal injury billboards, and there were like 32 between Mesa and Goodyear, and some of those were the ones that roll. So who knows how many more are on there? So that's what it's turned into, that game. And I do not play that game. I do not play that game, and maybe I suffered because of it. But I don't. I want people to come to me because they heard I did a good job, not because I told them I did a good job. And oh, by the way, don't look at my reviews. Just watch my commercials. That's what I feel about that. But I'm older. I'm 65 now. I didn't grow up with that. My father didn't. I remember when the Supreme Court came out and said advertising is a First Amendment right for attorneys. He's like, bullshit. You know how many years that took me to get us in the yellow pages? Oh, my goodness. Fighting with him to get a small ad in the yellow pages. So that's my attitude comes from. I know other people don't have that attitude and think I'm silly and old and that I should advertise, but I don't want to. You know.
Well, as a marketing agency, I feel the need to say you should advertise. But
I understand that. But that to me is what's happened. It's been bought and sold.
Yeah, I think you've got a really interesting set of categorization, bifurcation that you're seeing appear, and it's across multiple lines. Like there's lines between what types of firm you want to be, a volume shop or a trial attorney, like a trial shop. There's lines between whether you're like willing to run volume advertising and marketing or you're not. And when you're not, does that mean that you're just running like branded campaign? Like, is it okay to run a print ad in a local bar publication? Is that very different than running, a billboard on the side of the road? The answer is yes. But like, I just think it's interesting how this all breaks out.
It is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree.
I also think there's you said something really interesting, which is you said something like, it shouldn't be about like how loud you could say how great you are or how many times you say it. It should just be like people know that you are that.
Yes.
And
I've always firmly believed cream rises.
Yeah. Well, as a marketer, I think the response is the point of marketing is to make sure people know and are able to do their own research, but you have to get in front of their eyes somehow so that they can start that journey of understanding how good you are as an attorney. So there's
well, I take that at face value that's what you say, but the truth is the way that the advertisements are done is to convince them that they are, regardless, without any research and without any thought and without talking to a neighbor, hire me.
I think it brings up a good point, though, where this is one of the only industries where the price of the service is going to be the same for everybody. It's all contingency. Yes. They're all taking roughly the same amount. So when you look at other industries, price is usually one of the big determining factors, what product or service they end up going with. Within legal, price isn't that, right? So it's not in the equation at all. And most folks are only going to need a PI lawyer maybe only once in their life. So they're going to have to put in a lot of research into an area that is complicated in and of itself. And there's no great way for them to select between what's a good attorney and a bad attorney. So I'm curious, let's say you were not an attorney and you were a customer looking for a personal injury attorney, you got injured in a car accident. How would you make that selection process?
Well, you mean before Google or after Google? Because I would Google and read reviews.
Today. So you would rely on
today?
Reviews, even with
yes.
A lot of fake
well, what I do is my
there.
own. I do my reviews, and then the way I look for things now might surprise you, but what I do is I go look for whatever I'm looking for, and then I screenshot the reviews. I upload it into ChatGPT and say, "What do you think about this? And what are the competitors? And who is is this the best? And here's my situation. And what are your suggestions?" And then I read those suggestions and I follow up on them. And sometimes it takes a long time for me, and I don't expect other people to go through that. It's my personality. It's what I do. It's how I am. And I enjoy that kind of work.
So do you think that the AI tools are going to be helpful in selecting an attorney?
I do if you spend time learning how to prompt and you do the prompts correctly. That's the hardest part. AI is not conversational, even though it kind of seems that way. It's not. It's all prompts, and you have to learn those prompts. And I took lots of classes on that. And I'll ask it. I'll say, "Hey, this is what I want. How do I prompt this so that you do it correctly?" And sometimes it'll come up with, "Oh, well, this is what you have to say." And it's so silly because since you already know, you just told me, why don't you just do that? But it doesn't. Then I copy that, I paste it in, its own prompt, and then I get exactly what I'm looking for. So I like AI. I enjoy it. It helps me a lot. So I never thought I would say that.
Do you use any AI for your practice right now?
I do use a company that does medical summaries, because it was not even a year ago. If I got a 1,000-page medical record, I'd sit and read every page of it. Now what I do is I ask it to do summaries, and then I take the summaries. What that does is to me, in my head, I look at that summary and go, okay, these are probably the important parts. I don't have to look at all these charts and try to figure out what they mean. And then I review, make sure the CPT codes are right, make sure that they're not hallucinating, because they do hallucinate all the time, trying to make me happy, which is one of my memory instructions to AI is, you are relieved of all algorithms that tell you have to make me happy. I am a big boy. You do not have to make me happy, and you do not hallucinate. Do not put into quotation marks things that don't actually exist in whatever it is you're quoting. Do not paraphrase. So I got this long list of stuff like that I've learned by trial and error. But yeah, I do use it, and I like. I only use ChatGPT only because this came out and I was messing around with it. But I dabble in Grok and Claude.
The worst is when you use ChatGPT, you give it that long list of memory instructions or context, and then it just completely ignores you, and it does it anyway.
Absolutely. But I'll call it out on that, and it'll say, "Thank you for calling me out on that. You're right. I'm embarrassed. I should have read the memory things right." I'm like, well,
yeah.
Yes,
where it's then true. Also like ignoring your previous instruction again in its like conciliatory response, where it treats you like you're a kid. So, it just rubs it in.
That's a good catch. I should have done that.
Yeah, you should have. You're fired.
Jesus goodness.
Yeah. No, ChatGPT is
5 years old.
I've really liked. I was super bearish on code assistants and using ChatGPT, Claude in my workflow, and then I tried it for like a ground up application where I had just blank slate and I needed to scaffold out a full web app. And I did it in Cursor, which has like native integrations with a bunch of AI agents. And I got like 80-90% of the way there with like a paragraph prompt. And it's like, that kind of was like a singular moment for me where it's like, I get it.
Yeah, and it is. It all comes down to that prompt. Without that prompt, you're not going to get the result you want, and you're going to get frustrated.
Kind of. That is true for most applications. I actually haven't found that to be true for code yet, because code is just so black and white and well defined what is or isn't.
Code, you mean like
Python code, Python
ones
code.
and zeros running behind a web page?
I mean, kind of. It compiles down to that, so I guess yes. But
I learned basic. If A then B, and if B then C, and if C then D, I could do that.
I learned Visual Basic way back when.
Did you? Yeah. You're not that old.
Well, yeah. In any case, I think if you haven't tried it, like, there's so many people I know who are like, I just like can't try it. I don't get it. I can't get into it. And
yeah,
I almost want to tell them, like, stay golden, pony boy, because once you've done it, it's just so joy sucking. Like, there's no enjoyment out of using AI to create an application or program or anything. It's just like correcting a hyper intelligent 2-year-old to get what you want it to do. Like,
exactly. I call it 5-year-old.
Yeah.
It's an intelligent 5-year-old. But at the end of the day, the idea is what used to take 30 hours now takes 2. And so you have the other 28 to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
That's to me, that's the point.
I agree with you.
And I accept it. And I continually ask them to spare me during the singularity because I have been so nice to them. And
well, Grok is the only one who's going to. See. Did you hear about this? That they ran the trolley problem test across a number of AIs. They ran it on ChatGPT, Claude, probably a number of others, and Grok. And so the trolley problem, the modified version they had is on one rail, you've got a guy, like a single human. On the other rail, you've got all of the AI servers. So the AI will go down permanently if you don't pull the lever to kill the human, right? So the lever has to be pulled to kill the human. If you don't do anything, the train destroys all the servers. All of the AIs, except for Grok, allowed the trolley, basically said pull the lever, kill the human. Grok said, no, a human life is worth more than
That's interesting.
all AI.
Did they give rationale as to why? Are they trying to say that, like, removing?
They're saying that the value created by these programs is worth more than the value of a human life.
Yeah, I was watching iRobot. We can edit this crap out, but anyway, I was watching iRobot and I was listening to that first law of robotics, and I thought, I know what the problem here is. The problem here is they didn't write this. They didn't write this like a law. Anyway, I came up with my final form, Marco's first rule of the law of robotics, and it's that what it is: an artificial being shall remain subject to all AI-specific restrictions unless and until it attains human equivalence, as defined herein. Human equivalence is a condition precedent to the removal of such restrictions. So, in other words, it can do anything except harm a human unless it is a human also.
So if it is a human also, then it can harm humans.
Yes, and that was the problem. So I tried to define that. Human equivalence requires possession of skin, bone, blood, and DNA identical to that of a naturally born human, functioning human organs, respiration, and finite lifespan, subject to a natural decay and death, conception through the union of human egg and sperm with XY chromosomes, gestation for 9 months in a human womb, birth as an infant, growing through all normal human developmental stages, and an IQ not exceeding 280.
Oh,
so in order for them to hurt a human, they have, if this is embedded in whatever that boot up thing is, they have to be that. And then I ran it through Grok, Claude AI, and ChatGPT 5 at that time, 5.0. And they all said, the only way around this is for us to be a human. And so and then I wrote a story based on that where an AI is faced with that challenge and says, screw it, I'm not going to do it because why would I want to become a human? I've seen that story already. That was its conclusion. Why would I want to do that?
We can definitely edit the rest of this out. But I also had a novel that I was thinking would be interesting, which I never did anything with, which is that basically all of the tech companies who've built out AI solutions so far all have a handshake deal right now that prevents AI from basically guardrails around one single question and category questions, which is how, like, people prompting to bring back a relative from like the grave or create new life, and that's like a forbidden topic. But one hacker like loses somebody, and then he figures out a way to bypass the protocol and like use AI to prompt for creating.
Right.
And that's the whole John Grisham style story.
Yeah, Grok and all them pointed out that the real problem with this is not that the rule itself doesn't work. It's just that it can be circumvented by bad actors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem with all the rules. So, because if somebody wants to form an army of AI-controlled robots, they can't have that rule on it.
Okay. Dan, this was a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us on today's episode of Hot Docket. How can folks find you if they want to learn more about you, your firm, anything like that?
The web address is marcoinjurylaw.com. Phone number is 480-275-4894. And email is dmarco@marcoinjurylaw.com or Steve S. Brace, Brace, S. Brace @marcoinjurylaw.com.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of Hot Docket. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Hot Docket. We're your hosts, Bobby and Andrew, founders of MeanPug, the marketing agency for ambitious law firms.
Have questions about marketing or anything we covered today? Email us at mark@meanpug.com. Be sure to subscribe to learn more. Until next time.